we go. For better or worse, you're with us for the next 15 minutes.
We are
and,
closing the doors, so you will not be able to leave this. No, I'm kidding, of course.
And please notice the exits might be behind you if you'd like to escape. In the case of an emergency, the path is lighted.
All right, so everybody, welcome to the Advancing the DBA's Role in the Cloud. I do expect that some of you at least are DBAs. Please raise your both hands in the, oh God. You're, after the lunch, you're still able to move. That's impressive. That qualifies you to be a DBA, you know, because the best things are happening during the night or during the lunch, right? You all know the drills. So with the in the cockpit of Azure SQL managed instance, here we go. My name is Nico Neugebauer. I'm just another product manager who was a customer and worked and suffered similar pains to some of you are suffering today. Then we have a George Jeremic.
Yes, hello. So I'm the member of the PM team since 2 years back, and I'm working with my colleagues here on the scene. I'm focused mostly on data mobility, high availability, and disaster recovery.
Next one is Bogdan.
Hi, I'm Bogdan Gavrilovic. Had to read my name from the. I'm a product manager together with my colleagues. I'm mostly working on fleet management solutions, trying to convert DBAs to fleet admins.
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm also product manager with the Managed Instance Product Group. So one of the reasons why we actually got this session was in the previous sessions we'd worked with DBAs. We actually had a full training workshop for the past 2 years of SQL MI. And we were getting the questions, what does this mean for me going to the cloud, being an on-prem DBA? So actually your feedback in those sessions has inspired us to create this session. So for the first time, there it is.
Oh my God, no pressure. That means that the delivery is going to be perfect. So just to show, there are a couple more sessions that we still have left. Bogdan and me actually are staying after this session, but to deliver another sessions. And tomorrow at Microsoft Theater, George is going to deliver an introduction to SQL MI. And we have a meet the Managed Instance Product Group. My God. So you can go out, hang out, and bring us some coffee. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, you can ask really tough questions. We will be glad. So this is our agenda. People who want to read the agenda have 3, 2, 1, and we go into the first part, which is same as ever. You will be surprised what didn't change for the DBAs once they kind of evolve. So did you forget about the DBA, or did Microsoft forget about the DBA? Did the world forget about the DBAs and the need of the database administration, because everything is artificial intelligence and blah, 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 games, NoSQL applications, analytics, AI, you know, all these buzzwords. World does not need DBAs anymore. Have you ever heard this in a couple of like last 10, 15 years? Right, 15 years later, still rocking, right? I want to make one point, and some of you must be already ready for this. Do you know what this stands for? And this is the business case for your existence. It's default blame acceptor, right? Application cannot connect, DBA's fault. DNS has failed, DBA's fault, right? My application is slow, it's DBA's fault. Did you create a query? Do we need to query the data, right? Whatever happens, it's always DBA's fault. It's not application, it's not network, it's always DBA. That means you need to have somebody to be blamed for. So, you know, business case solved, at least for me. So nobody becomes a DBA, I'll risk to say, in a natural way. There are almost, I know of one university in the United States that have a course dedicated of somebody becoming at the first job a DBA. Is there something similar in your countries? Is there a university in UK where you can become a DBA at that profession, apparently? No, never heard, really. Like, and most people who are doing DBA job, they have evolved. You were something different. You were involuntary DBA. You wanted to take care of the application. It's because you cared about the end result. For me, DBAs can be really, really grumpy, but they care about the final result. You care about the data. You care about the performance. You care, maybe indirectly because you're a geek, how business is doing because they pay your salary and ours as well, right? Okay? So there are many things that do not change for the DBAs, but there is a constant shifting. Somebody from you probably programmed assembly in the 80s and 90s, but you evolved to C and C++, from Paint to Photoshop, from OS2 to Windows, from Notepad to Visual Studio. Have anybody ever compiled something in a Notepad and run, GCC maybe compiler, something like that? A couple of people should have done this. Developer to database administrator. And that's my claim. From DBA, a lot of you are going to go the transformation into the cloud database administrator. So still DBA, some things are not meant to change. We, Microsoft, we keep on delivering new features and new technologies. Somebody, and not AI, need to learn it, to understand. Somebody needs to connect it. Somebody needs to listen to the business people and map the business needs to technology. Unless there is some super mega mechanical Turk that does it, I think there is a need for humans who understand the technology. You still need to deal with the application developers. You still need to deal with the network administrators, right? You still need to deal with the system admins. You still need to discuss the budget because you will not get the 128 CPU vCores for application that needs one CPU vCore in the eyes of the CIO, right? That doesn't change. You still need to care about the architecture design. I know you love this one, documentation. I know there are systems where, have you ever seen a documentation written by AI? Would you like to have this kind of documentation without human, filtering out, putting some gloves and shaping it? I do not. Copilot, we are a Copilot company. We deliver a solution that helps you to facilitate the job, but the human mind, still needed. Deployment, somebody does a DevOps wonderful thing, but do you need to fix something that was broken and there is a 6-hour rollback process? Who is going to be awakened? A DevOps person or a DBA? I say DBA. So DBA is still the last line of the defense. You still do the troubleshooting support duties. The migration consolidation, anybody sees application or, I don't know, developers doing this job? I do not. I ask my friends who still do the DBA duties and that's what we're still doing. And in the cloud, on the example of our product, managed instance, you still need to do this job, same as ever. Index rebuilding, statistics update, you need to run DBCC check DB, same as ever. Do not expect that it's done automagically. That's a different level, right? Shrinking the database, you spend too much money with increasing space. Who's going to do this? DBAs. Monitoring, performance, disk spinning, compliance. Anybody works in the big enterprises here? Become compliance? Do you love the word? Who's going to do this? Your CTO is going to write the reports on the compliance. They probably do not remember even what that technology means. They are so high in the hierarchy. It's not their job anymore. There need to be a person doing this. Even the reporting, BCDR, all of this is still the same as ever. Running X events, tracing, locking, blocking, dead blocking. I mean, monitoring workloads, right-sizing the instance, tuning the queries. We have some auto-tuning, but I would say it's not yet perfect. There is a need for a DBA to look at the same index that was created 15 times, the 16th time we can avoid of recreating. Application is already slow enough, right? You still need to manage the space on managed instances. You still need to create file groups and files. You still need to do all of this stuff for the compliance. Security. We're not doing the creation of the roles of the permissions. It's still your job. We're not taking it away because we do not know what your business requirements are, and this is not going to change. There is no chance for that. You still need to monitor the networking access. We have great tools like the Defender, but there is a need. Reporting, writing reports, BCDR, somebody deleted some important data or there is a need to recovery. We don't do it automatically. You will need to restore the database. We provide you with a backup, but it's your job. Will some tasks be automated? Sure, if they're repetitive. If you want to thrive, look for the non-repetitive tasks. So this checklist is same as ever. Disaster recovery planning, testing, all of this. There is one more thing. There are two types of the cloud DBAs. For me, for Nico, not for my company, not for my colleagues, just database caretaker, you still do the same job. I say DJing, spinning the disk, turning the databases. But there is so much for you to learn and to do, and that's a true cloud database administrator. With that, let's go into the Microsoft responsibilities with my colleague, George.
Thanks, Nico. So this is about those things that you will be blamed for, but that blame you can transfer to us. So small request. So if you're in a position, please look up our session from 2 days ago about deep dive into SQL MI, because that one will cover some of the concepts that we'll talk about in much more technical detail. Okay, let's talk about service deployment. So you're running SQL Server and you're running PaaS. This means that you delegated some duties to us, and this section is about that. So about deployments, let's first go through some helpful terminology. So deployment is a payload carrying change to any of those things that we manage on your behalf. Maintenance window, this is a time interval, basically, that you have a partial control over, and during which service deployments can happen. That doesn't mean that they will necessarily happen, but they're allowed to happen during that time interval. Maintenance event, this is basically this contiguous time interval when some change is being deployed, basically deployment execution. Failover, this is the event where you actually do some form of, where we do some form of switching between virtual machines that constitute your service, and this one can impact like overall experience because there can be very brief downtime intervals. We'll talk about that in a moment. And finally, I just want to mention Service Fabric, which is that like silent puppeteer in the background that does many things in Azure SQL, but in this particular context, it's responsible that your service deployment is carried out as planned from the beginning to the end. So what do we manage and what do we deploy on your behalf? Obviously, we have physical machines and we have physical upgrades, which is basically host operating system that hosts your virtual machines. But we also fully manage your virtual machines, starting from the operating system layer through what we call infrastructure up to the SQL Server itself. And that's basically the most important thing. So all upgrades and all patching we do on your behalf to ensure that you're running on your, that all security updates and content updates are applied. What is the key message here is that since we have this service fabric, that this whole operation is online. So what you can expect here is only brief time intervals where typically when the failover happens, when there can be smaller downtime of your service. What you can do, so this whole service deployment process doesn't really require your intervention. However, what you can do is that we provide some events that you can subscribe to, so you can get advanced notifications, or if you wish, you can do some more complex automation that can do some of the things that are normally in your area of responsibility based on the notification that the update is coming, say, in 24 hours. And yes, so with this feature, advanced notifications, we will let you know 24 hours before maintenance event starts, and also when the event starts and when it ends. So what are some key takeaways regarding the service deployments? So your action is not required during this whole process. You should expect some transient faults, like network interruptions or loss of very brief connectivity interruptions to your database during this maintenance event. And finally, you should leverage maintenance window and advanced notification features that will help you plan for this whole event. Okay, now let's talk about high availability. Now, I really do not want to go into details of this image, but just to briefly describe what you're seeing here is simply a side-by-side comparison of your high availability topology based on the choices you make. So if you were observant during Nico's part of presentation, you saw that BCDR is something that is your responsibility. To be very specific, what is your responsibility is when you create your managed instance, you need to specify the tier you want to use, GP or BC, and you also need to choose one type of availability. Is it local availability or zone, local redundancy, I apologize, or zone redundancy. And based on that, we will create this topology for you, we will run it, and we will ensure that it works so you don't have to take care of it. That's the first key message. Second key message is that all of this is SLA backed. Now, let's mention disaster recovery. So disaster recovery is also something that is partially dependent on you, only in the sense that you have to decide whether you want to create a disaster recovery solution for which we use failover groups. So what you basically need to do is to dedicate one managed instance to that, to deploy failover group, and from that point on, we ensure that your data is continuously replicated to your disaster recovery server, and in the event of the outage or during the event of drill, you can do a switch to the disaster recovery site. So it provides instance level disaster recovery capability, so all databases on managed instance. It requires one-time setup, and also you should choose appropriate failover policy. Right now we are supporting two policies, customer managed and Microsoft managed. Customer managed means that you will be fully responsible for initiating failover when you find it necessary or needed. Microsoft's policy simply means that in case some outage, and typically zonal or like data center outage level occurs, it is our responsibility to initiate failover to disaster recovery site on your behalf. And finally, let me say something about automated backups. Again, much more details in our deep dive session, so I'll just bring up highlights. So we are doing automatic backups of all databases hosted on managed instance. We are doing full backups, we are doing diffs, we are doing transaction log backups. I don't know why is this actually third, but doesn't matter. Backup storage redundancy, so you have multiple options. You have like local redundant and you have zone redundant. And backup retention, you can choose between short-term retention that can be between 1 and 35 days. Default is 7 days, I believe. And also you can opt for long-term retention, meaning that once you configure it, we will start copying all your full backups from your STR to the LTR storage, and it can be configured up to 10 years. And that concludes this part of the talk. Thanks.
Thank you. We're going to cover things that are shared responsibilities between you and the cloud provider, between the DBA and Microsoft. These are things that you would be blamed about. You would try to redirect the blame to Microsoft, but we would push back and redirect it back to you. So it would be a gray area. These are the things, joke aside, what the DBA and the platform need to do together, which is the Azure infrastructure management, provisioning Azure resources, setting up networking, security, compliance, database deployment and configuration, and ensuring business continuity. So on the Azure infrastructure management side, someone needs to be the cloud cost-cutting mastermind behind the scenes, keep things in check. I was playing football a week before this, and my friend who's working as a DBA, he's always, of course, complaining about developers. He's also complaining about management and everyone else in his company, and sales, of course. And he said, I ran a quick script, deleted a bunch of stray resources, and saved more than sales teams, more money than the sales team signed for the years, which maybe also speaks about the perspective of his company. But that thing aside. So what's the responsibility of the DBA? Learning about the existing services. The new services come out every year. You saw excellent talks in this SQL Bits conference about new stuff that are coming out. Integration with these services and implications of these integrations. Understanding cloud infrastructure components and how to integrate with them, Azure Key Vault, storage accounts, etc. And optimizing cloud resources, of course. That's the name of the game, especially in this economy today. And on the Azure side, Azure will provide a reliable and scalable infrastructure on top of which you can do all this. And the next area we'll cover is networking, not networking in the sense of going to conferences and expanding your network, but in terms of implementing best practices, security best practices, company policies. So if you set up a wrong firewall rule, you can't really blame Azure platform. So you would still need to pretty much apply all this stuff, use network security groups, Azure firewalls, etc. And on the platform side, Azure will help ensure platform security, ensure all the compliance certifications are provided, and adding, of course, new security protocols, new solutions, new services, keeping things up to date. And I'll hand over mic to Nico because I'm speaking too much.
Okay. You know, that's high availability, as they say, right? That's why we always have more than one replica running. There is always, I mean, Bogdan, I'm sorry that I will call you a standby replica. You are much better than just a standby replica, but you know. Yeah, microphone was a standby replica. Anyway, I'm not dropping yet the mic, just saying for the record. Okay, so next topic will be the security and compliance. Also, again, this is the area of the shared responsibility. There is a part that you as a DBAs or involuntary DBAs or system administrators will be responsible. And there is a key part that we, Azure, the public cloud provider, are responsible. I don't know how much of a gray area it is, but I'll list you a couple of the things. So you are responsible for implementing the best practices regarding the security. You will need to have a kind of the merge of the best practices that we ask you to provide and the best security practices that your company already has as a practice. And it will be sometimes a difficult merge because you will deal with, when you are migrating from Windows, which let's call it an operation system, to public cloud Azure, a different operating system, there are things that will map one by one, but there will be things that your existing playbooks, especially on the security front, they're not needed, they're excessive, or they're not even enough. You need to do that. The access control, as I already mentioned, the creating of roles and logins, it's your responsibility. Nobody will help you. We keep on adding the services that will, like Azure Defender, that will tell you, like, hey, there is a strange account connecting to your service and it exports a lot of the information, but they need to be really obvious and a little bit stupid to be detected. So not always happening, right? You will need to make a choice regarding the TDE. Anybody here does not know what TDE is? Transparent data encryption, or so-called encryption at rest. So, by the way, I'll throw you a performance question. Are you aware what would be the reason why Azure SQL Managed Instance does not use IFI, Instant File Initialization? Any guesses? Because we encrypt everything with TDE. We use encryption at rest. And as you might well know, if you have a TDE encryption on one database, even your temp DB automatically becomes encrypted. And encrypted databases cannot use instant file initialization. They need to zero out the disk. It's a security measure. So you will need to choose whether you go for a TDE encryption provided by us and the key, or I call it, it's like in my own internal narrative language, I call it BIOC, but it's actually bring your own key. It's you can take your own TDE encryption key and put it in Azure Key Vault and connect to Azure SQL Managed Instance. Your choice, there are consequences for each of the choices because we are automatically improving the system-provided keys for encryption. And if you bring your own, that will be your responsibility. Advantages and disadvantages. Creating, updating logins, user roles, permissions, all of the usual stuff that you so much love. Hey, I need a special role. We already give you 3. I need an extra one. That's how it rolls. Nothing changes. Managing groups and permissions. By the way, did you know that Azure SQL Managed Instance allows you to still use Windows authentication? We are the only PaaS service that allows you to do that. So you can actually set up your Active Directory syncing into the cloud, and then you can use your same Windows authentication methods, even with a double hop for the legacy application or not, for authenticating. You need to set it up. Even the syncing of the Active Directory into previously known as the Azure Active Directory, but now it's called Entra. In my language, it means to enter, Entra. It really does. In Portuguese, that means to enter. Well, a lot of jobs for you. Configuring and running audit doesn't change. You will need to do the reporting on SLA by yourself as of the moment. So what we do on the Azure side, we ensure the security compliance certification. We keep on introducing new protocols, new security compliance certifications. So whatever is running the system, running the cloud, improving it. So like introducing the new TLS versions, it's on us. You need to update the drivers, your connections, but we will provide you. You do not need to worry about this. The latest technology will come into every single database solution. We care huge amounts about security, but not everything, of course. So innovating with new security options and services. Like we have many new things that will be revealed in the years to come in the pipeline. So you will need to learn about them, how to take advantage of them, integrate with your solutions. Then, database deployment and configuration. Selecting the right Azure resources for deployment, totally your responsibility. We will not tell you how many CPU vCores you need. We have some defaults, but if you are coming from 80 CPU vCore VM, please do not tell us that our 4 CPU vCore Azure SQL Managed Instance cannot compete, because, I mean, it's pretty much obvious. You need to match. Yeah? There is enough work for you. There are so many options to choose. We have pretty good defaults, but you will need to do some choices. You will need to configure the networking and security settings. It's on you. You deploy, you configure the instances. You deploy and configure databases. There is no magic button like deploy our databases and make them faster. Also known as a turbo button. Was not invented yet, but it's coming. Hopefully. I don't know. Copy and move databases. So actually, anybody using the snapshot, database snapshots? Did you know that you can use database snapshot on Azure SQL Managed Instance? It's called copy database. You basically copy database to the same instance or to the other instance, and that will be your snapshot. And it's a upgraded distributed availability groups. That's how we do it. Who loves transactional replication? Now, please stop raising your hands. That's too many people, right? Who is using transactional replication? A couple. It's still amazing technology. By the way, we support replicating to SQLMI and from SQLMI. Configure BCDR. Restoring backups. It's on you. It's like no magic. There is no thought reading process. And you will need to choose the instance, ensure that there is enough space, like typical tasks. And scaling up, scaling down. You know, I don't know, bank holiday, your retail company, everybody doing the shopping. You need maybe on Sunday scale something up, and then next Saturday you scale down. You will be responsible for the resources consumption. What we do, we ensure the availability, as Georgia very well mentioned, maintenance, patching, updates. We innovate, introducing new services and new configuration options. Just yesterday, we doubled the click stops for selecting CPU vCores. There were 8 options, now it's 16. So can you go with the Azure SQL VM to 10 cores or to 12? Won't be easy. You will need to go very exotic settings. We do provide it out of the box now, and that's actually our responsibility. On business continuity, picking the right service tier, picking the right SLA. For example, zone redundancy gives you an extra availability. Then selecting the BCDR solution, like what a backup redundancy zone, zone redundancy, geo-zone redundancy, selecting the DR solution, then policies. There are, it's a huge topic on what you can configure and allow within your company or within your department or not. Designing and testing the recovery plans, of course. Then on the Azure responsibility, we have creating and maintaining the backups, providing multiple levels of resiliency and introducing more, and increasing the SLA. We always worry about that. And new options, geo-replication, point-in-time restore, and new offers, higher SLAs, etc., etc. With that, my colleague Danny will show you great opportunities.
How much do we have? 15? Okay, so then I'll do my part and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, hi. So as we've seen at the beginning of the session, as Nico said, you know, everything is evolving. He coded in assembly and then he learned to code in C, C++, so such is the role of DBA. And from becoming an on-premises DBA to becoming an Azure DBA, I took a stab of maybe suggesting some areas where maybe you could advance the skills. Of course, this is all just a suggestion, but some ideas that I had that you can maybe look into how you can improve your skills becoming an Azure Cloud DBA. So in this respect, there are a couple of topics that I outlined. First of all, I think that in using the Azure, you need to be familiar with Azure concepts, like what are subscriptions, what are resource groups, how it's all organized in Azure, just like general familiarity that you need to know in order to navigate the system. Then another opportunity is, because it's a service, company is paying for it, do you need all the resources all the time? Do you maybe need to stop some databases or VMs if you're not using them, or put them on a schedule or script that? There are opportunities for significant cost savings than in cloud, which might be part of your future role. Then being in Azure, it's a wonderful thing that you actually have access to thousands and thousands of other services. So it's not just a database, it's database plus machine learning, AI, database plus Fabric, plus all kinds of services. So how do you all connect it together? I guess first you need to have familiarity with the services that are available, with the offerings, and then different ways how to connect them and how to actually use your data with Azure services. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about new frontiers, such as the Fabric, Copilot, intelligence. What does it actually mean for you? So in terms of Azure concepts, that I think if you're learning about Azure, maybe structured 3 different things as a DBA that you might consider. Azure fundamentals. So we already talked about that. What does it mean? What are the offerings? What are the SKUs? So different databases, right? Even with VMs or managed instance, how many CPUs and cores and, you know, storage space do you need? What kind of IOPS do you need? Yesterday, we have introduced a new version of general purpose managed instance, which has a new feature, IOPS. So you need to determine those things. You need to be familiar with that. Then understanding the architecture. I think if you have been following us in our sessions on managed instance, we have talked about MI architecture. We have said that, and I think my colleague also in previous slide has said that business critical managed instance is the same as having always on 4 node setup on premises, which you no longer need to maintain. But you need to be familiar that that's what that offering is. Or general purpose managed instance being an FCI alike, having availability like FCI is on-prem. So general understanding of the Azure architecture and how it all works underneath will help you choose the right product and actually do the right thing for a company. A little bit of networking. I know DBAs hate this. I'm not saying that you need to become a networking expert. However, familiarity with the concept is important because when you deploy SQL database like a managed instance, you deploy it into VNet, virtual network, and you need to understand that that database is in a virtual network and that you cannot access it unless you enable the public point from the outside, or that you need, if you have let's say your on-prem environment or VM, that you actually need to have a VPN to that managed instance to communicate. You don't need necessarily to have networking skills to set it up, but I guess general familiarity of what is what in terms of networking will help you easily communicate more with your colleagues and peers. And finally, I think there is a great opportunity in Azure for automation, because outside on the platform side, there's Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell, which enables you to script things governing the database and integrating all these other services. So for example, you could automate deployments. You could set up start and stop on a schedule. You could do all kinds of things by automation, and not only using the traditional CLI and PowerShell scripts, but in Azure, there are new concepts such as runbooks, logic apps. There are new ways in Azure offered to you where you can automate things, be it either data, deployments, reporting, whatever, which is outside of your actual database. So I'm just pointing you in some directions that I think might be a good learning opportunities. And then you might wonder, well, that's great, but how do I actually go about learning? Well, I would like you to take a note of this link or maybe take a picture. This is a repository of built-in learning courses that we have for Azure. So I would really recommend, if you see on the left-hand side, you click Azure, and then there are things like Azure fundamentals, the architectural components, like things that I've talked about in the previous slide. These are like short sessions, doesn't take too much time. These are not like hours long, like, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on a session. You go through it, you click through it, and you get a general knowledge. So I think this is a good point to point you in the right direction for you to develop. Now, second topic that I want to talk to you about is how to optimize your costs in Azure. I think we can divide this in 2 aspects. First, learning what platform offers or what kind of service offerings and discounts we have on the platform. That's one segment. And the other segment is actually using the product. So in the first segment, let's say learning about licensing and licensing rights and different discounts, that's the first part. But the second part is using the product. Can you start it? Can you stop it? Can you automate it? So how you can save, how much backup storage are you using? So using the product, how you actually optimize your costs. So let me actually cover all of these 4 pillars just briefly. All of this is documented, but my point here, we don't have time, of course, to go into details all of these. My point in this session was just to kind of point and direct you to certain areas for your awareness, and then you can explore more because this is all documented very well in all of our documentation. So the first one is Azure Hybrid Benefit. What it basically means, if you have an existing on-prem SQL Server on-premises licenses under software assurance, you can get free licenses on Azure SQL Managed Instance. Without going into details how it works, it's all documented. I'm just pointing in the right direction. The second one is reserved capacity. We have actually learned in speaking in our sessions and speaking to customers that maybe not all the customers are aware of this, but if you know that you will be running a service or a certain database or set of databases or set of managed instances for a longer time, if you prepay, you get a discount. So Azure has these discounts. If you, let's say, prepay for 1 year or for 3 years, you get significant discounts. And I think it's up to 33%, and with licensing benefit, you can save up to 80% costs. We have a lot of slides and a lot of material on this already available. Again, I'm pointing in the right direction. That's maybe something to consider. Then we have actually, in speaking to, in different sessions to our customers, have found out that people are generally not aware that we have developer subscriptions. So when you go to Azure to create a subscription, generally, it will lead you to create a production subscription that's like a full price for everything. But if you go and set up, if you search like developer subscriptions, how to set up developer subscription, many kind of discounts are already built in if you're using developer subscription. And with that, you of course, the licensing agreement is that you use it for dev testing, not for production. Another benefit that we have, I think in many of our sessions, you have heard us talking about replication, hybrid scenarios. So there are setups possible such that you can have SQL Server which connects to managed instance to the cloud and replicates the data, or maybe you can two managed instances in failovers group for disaster recovery. If you're using those secondary managed instances as only a passive replica, as a standby replica, the license is free. So if you have those kind of scenarios, just be aware. And this is my general pointing in general direction, what platform offers as a built-in way to save some money. And there's a pricing calculator, all of this that I've talked about. You can click different configurations options, what you're using, if you have reserved instances or not, licenses. The link below provided, or if you search Azure pricing calculator, will help you kind of figure out the costs. Now, another way to actually optimize cost is using the product itself, such as maybe start-stop. SQL Managed Instance, you can start it and you can stop it. You can do it manually, or if you have a predictable workload, you can do it through a scheduler. So if you know, if I want to use my instance 8 hours a day or whatever it is, you can set up the schedule, it works automatically. Here are some examples of discounts combined. So the first one is if you use pay-as-you-go model. That means just pay as you go. Then dev test subscription, you see significantly cheaper. That's the second column. The third one is you use reserved pricing. You see how the price goes down. So if you prepay for 1 or 3 years. And then the fourth one is you're using dev test subscription start stop, then you can save even more money. So by combining all these things together, you really will find an optimal for you. And I think this is just using and understanding all these options can actually work to your advantage. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is maybe not everyone is aware that MI has instance pools. So similarly, as you've heard that there are SQL DB instance pool to cram like lots of databases in it to save the cost, MI also has this concept of instance pools where you can provision a pool of vCores. Let's say you provision a pool of 8 vCores, and you can pack smaller MIs in it. So for example, you could provision an 8 vCore instance pool, and the smallest instance you could put in there is 2 core. So in an 8 core pool, you can have 4 small 2 core MIs. So maybe if you have smaller workloads that only require just 2 core capacity a little bit, you can take an advantage of instance pool to even further save the cost. And here was just an example that, again, with the start, stop, and instance pool, you can even save more money. So play with those options just for general understanding. I hope this helps. And I already talked about this in advance. Instance pool, here's a visual example of how you can pack smaller instances and larger ones into an instance pool. So we don't have a 2 vCore SQL MI offering outside of the instance pool. Okay, another way to actually take advantage of the cost is offloading read-only workloads to replicas. So SQL MI BC Business Critical instance is an always-on availability setup, and it has a read-only replica that you can use for free. And then if you're using MI2MI replication for geo disaster recovery, then you can also use the secondary MI to offload read-only workloads. Again, important is right-size your resources. Don't provision an 80-core VM if you don't need it. I mean, it's just a common sense, but it's also something to take into consideration because your needs might change in time. It's about the change, right? So maybe today you need this capacity, tomorrow you need different capacity. In Azure, the capacity is elastic. So MI, with the working production workload, you pull the sliders, you increase or decrease the resources. There's going to be a failover, right? But the change is dynamic, so you can scale, upscale and downscale dynamically and optimize the cost. And maybe you can script it as well, right? Another point to take into consideration, if you're using backup, make sure that retention, that you set it up for how long you need. Maybe if you don't need to keep your backups for 35 days, maybe you need shorter, make sure that you're not paying for extra storage unnecessarily. Another thing which is really cool, as of recent, we have managed instance can connect to a data lake. So for example, if you have a really bloated database, let's say you collected 10 years of some sales data, right? And maybe you need just a year of data to use. Why not offload all the data that you don't necessarily need to access really fast to a data lake? You can still query it through the managed instance. So your hot data stays on managed instance and your cold data goes into data lake. You can still query from managed instance that data in data lake. So application is transparent for the application, but you're incurring lower costs because data lake is cheaper. So that's also one of the ways to save on the cost. I think we have a couple of more minutes. I think this will cover the new frontiers. So as a cloud DBA, it's very important to understand there's an ecosystem that your database now lives in, right? It lives in the world of Fabric and OpenAI and all the ways to automate the applications and all the ways to use the security like Entra, AKV, Purview. Make sure that you are familiar with what Azure offers and that your database, your managed instance, can connect with these services and take an advantage of that. And I think in the keynote yesterday, we have seen a wonderful example of Copilot and SQL. Use those to your advantage, right? Learn what they are. Database Watcher was also announced in our keynote. It's a new built-in monitoring tool, native to the cloud. Use it to monitor all of your SQL resources in a single pane of glass in Azure. And this will help you as a DBA understand the performance and understand what you need to do. Still, the application performance is on DBA. That remains the same as Nico said. Finally, Copilot. It's here. It's not going to, I don't think it's not going to take DBA job away, but it will help, right? We've seen an example yesterday. Hey, is my query really slow? Can you help me do something about it? We've seen an example. So make sure you get familiar with the latest in this development and make sure that in your company, in your organization, you're the one who are using it. Yesterday I talked with a friend, with a colleague here, and we actually talked about the session in DBA role, and he said, it's not that the DBA job will go away, but DBA who knows Copilot and uses new technology will get to keep that job for much, much longer. So I will leave it at that. Thank you. So now, any questions? I think we have like 1 minute or something. Feedback for the session, and also you will get an automated email if you scanned at the door. You also get an email to leave the feedback for the session. That's the first part. The second part is you would like to reach out to Managed Instance team. The second QR code, that's our contact information, so feel free to do that or see us at the Microsoft booth. We'll be around. We'll be around today and tomorrow, Saturday, the whole day. As a reminder, tomorrow at 11, Saturday, There's a Meet product, Meet MIPG, so you can come to see us as well tomorrow. Thank you.